James is a senior in the Lynch School of Education, studying applied psychology, human development, and sociology, and minoring in African and African diaspora studies in the pre-law track. James is from the heart of New York City, born in the Bronx and raised in Harlem. He's an active protester and activist for issues of equity, with passionate love for the truth, educational equity, youth leadership development, and social justice. James is transformational. You'll understand why I say that when he finishes his talk. So, please welcome James Kale.
Hi everyone, and thank you for supporting BCTalks this evening and attending my talk on the lagging duckling, opportunity in the African diaspora. So I'm excited to talk to you all this evening and let you know about the work I've been doing. This is the message I believe all people need to hear. It's a work and message of my own. And from my studies on the academic achievement gap and the comparative analysis of Black Latino immigrants, native-born Black Latinos, you'll all be startled by what I found today. My work has been so vast, so rich, and so radically different from what we all have been informed these past few years that I had difficulty trying to figure out exactly how to present this all to you. So I wrapped this up and put this up into 3 different parts to my talk. Number 1, the achievement gap is not black and white, literally or metaphorically. Number 2, identity dictates your success in education. And number 3, the achievement gap is an opportunity gap. So I want to begin by telling you 2 stories. The first one is of my friend Lou. He's a senior here. So back to our freshman year, we had a conversation. And I forgot how it happened, what started it, but he basically told me he's African American. And because of my work, I sighed, because he's not African American. But I said, Lou, I can't tell you how to identify or tell you who you are, but you are actually Guinean American. And he was like, no, I'm not. I'm African American. I'm from Harlem. Don't tell me what I am. I said, you're right. I told you. I can't tell you who you are, but from how the way the nation state works and how we identify people in this country, that's who you are. So remember that story. And number 2, my friend Akosia. I watched her talk to this girl in class one day. And this girl said to her, oh my God, you are so popular. You're dope. I think it's because you're African. You're not just black. You're holding up all the black population, you're succeeding in education, and you're successful, and you're making them look good. Again, I sighed. I was like, Lord. So I want to thank the 2 of them, Lou for having this conversation with me, which I never knew would be so useful, and Akosia for allowing me to share her experience. In these stories, you'll hear the experience of 2 first-generation Americans whose parents are from Africa. Lou from Guinea and Akosia from Ghana. And you hear in their stories the experience of language, which is internalized and projected and forced upon them. So we're going to go further with that, right? And please bear with me as we go forth in my first time using Prezi. The achievement gap. Oftentimes when people hear the achievement gap, they often think of a picture similar to this, where black people are casted out off to the side or in the back, missing out on education. Or another image of urban schools or at-risk youth, and the black students are not doing well in school and white students in a private school. Or another image where there's a crack going through the classroom. You see white students maintaining their chairs while the black students are struggling to stay in their seats and falling in the cracks. But the achievement gap is truly defined as the persistent disparity within education, looking at educational measures, looking at testing scores, grades, and educational earnings and graduation rates. We are constantly fed that this achievement gap is ongoing and widening between blacks and whites in this country since the 1960s. But this is oversimplification perpetuated by the media, because in actuality, Africans, immigrant, or first-generation Americans are most succeeding above all in education. And their kin, African Americans, are least succeeding in education. So here are some stats. Immigrants are in greater numbers at any and all colleges than African Americans. Also from my studies, I found out that first-generation immigrant adolescents exhibit lower levels of juvenile delinquency than African Americans, and second or third generation plus generation children. Immigrants are outperforming African Americans and second and third generation Americans as well. as well as they have a positive attitude towards schools and children. The lineup of success. From examining immigrants from the continent of Africa, the West Indies, and Latin America and South America, British-speaking persons, which means that they're from former British colonies like Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, and other countries within the Caribbean, they complete more years of schooling, have higher earnings, and attain higher educational success than French and Spanish-speaking immigrants. This is in large part because the language barrier doesn't exist for them, and it's much easier for them to assimilate. And it's also interesting to note that Latinos have been migrating to this country far more than any of the other immigrants, yet they're still kind of at the bottom of this trajectory and success in education. So the big question I got was, what is driving these results and disparity within the diaspora? Who are you? Ethnic and racial identity development is a social psychology which grew from social identity theory. This tells us that a strong sense of group identification is important in how you succeed in education. It has a sense of belonging, it has a sense of success, and you feel like you can connect yourself to something much greater than who you are. Ethnic identity develops in adolescence and is passed from one generation to the next through customs, languages, practices, values, and things of that like. I was able to draw this out because I was able to see Black immigrants and first-generation immigrants succeed because they had that direct identity. These populations can trace themselves back to a specific country, language, history, something that African Americans cannot do. These populations come from or migrate from a country where they were struggling from political or economic oppression, and they arrive to the United States. Again, this is something African Americans cannot do. Yes, African Americans have a long history in this country, but in the very essence of their ethnic identity, it has been stripped and taken away from them from the time they got to this country and to this day because it's not taught in the classrooms for them or in the media. As Marcus Garvey said, a people without its past is like a tree without roots. Immigrants and first-generation immigrants have a similar motivation because they or their parents left their home countries, again, for a better life due to political or economic strife and oppression. So that serves as a means of motivation for them. But these results get rather interesting as second and third generation immigrants, Blacks, Latinos, begin to assimilate and take on the African American identity, which is forced upon them, like we got from the Lou story and from Akosia's story. And they become further estranged from the family country and begin their educational performance, which begins to decline as well as African Americans. So I ended up finding out something really, really scary. That assimilated children of immigrants' educational outcome and achievement begins to decline as they become more American. Is becoming American psychologically and educationally damaging? Again, I sighed. I looked like this. I was in a maze, trapped. I felt like I don't know what to do with my research, what happens now with the stuff that I found out, what could I possibly do? Because there's something going on, again, in education and related to identity development. And how could I better the experience for native Black and born Latinos and Blacks in this country, particularly African Americans? So the opportunity is now here. For those of you who read Opportunity is Nowhere, take a deep breath and come see me after we could talk. But there is a big opportunity here. We should discuss what is really taking place in education and causing this gap within the African diaspora with truthful coverage rather than allowing the false perpetuation that is between Blacks and whites in this country. We should stop defining people and enforcing assimilation onto people. We say we are a nation of immigrants who come here for freedom to be who they are, yet we push conformity and oppression for their development. Here we learn that we should change the language of how we should think of people, see people, and how we think of people. This is the opportunity for self-determination. America has never been great, so I don't know what some of these people are talking about, but we now have the urgency and the opportunity right now to make it a great country. There is nothing wrong with being African American, so I hope you're gonna take that away. But what I'm aiming to show you is that the problem in our policies, as well as Black Latinos take on this identity, they are pushed to take that African American identity, which is barely discussed, and when it is discussed in the realms of slavery or as slaves. So when they say that, they're disconnecting them from the world and personhood and giving them an identity only rooted in a time where everything was stripped from them, which is purposeful in nature. The reclamation of the contributions African Americans have in history and in this country should be incorporated and discussed when talking about American history. That is inventions, the arts, music, dance, poetry, literature, and things of the like, because they have been here for so long and have contributed to the success of this country. This will create something African American students can connect to and will increase motivation and success for this group of student population. Today, let's change the policies and schooling system to provide an equitable opportunity for all people to be who they are and know where they come from. Thank you.